Hello everybody, today we're doing Leetcode number 217, contains duplicate. Given an integer array, call to nums, return true if any value appears at least twice in the array, and return false if every element is distinct. So let's look at example 1. The input is 1, 2, 3, and 1. We return true because we see 1 at least twice in the array. For example 2, the input is 1, 2, 3, and 4, and because all 4 numbers are different, we return false. In example 3, we see a couple of 1s here, a couple of 3s, 2 4s, and 2 2s. We've got a lot of copies here, but it really wants to return true if any time you see a value that appears at least twice. One way we can do this is by using a hashmap. So a hashmap is an object, and on the left side, you have your key, and on the right side, you have your value. So for the key, we can use it as the number on the left, and for the value, we can use it as any value. It could be true or false. It could be a character count. Let's use true. True or false. Okay, so how this works is when you iterate through the array, right now we're at 1. We look at the hash map and we're like, hey, do you have a key with 1 in it? And it does not. So we go ahead and stick 1 as a key, and the value here would be true. We go to the next iteration, which is 2. And we go to the hash map. We see that it's not in the map. So we add 2 in here, and we go to true. At the next iteration, we go to 3, and it's not in the map, so we add it in here. And at the last iteration, which is at 1, we go to the hash map, and because we see that there is already a 1 inside of the hash map, we will return true. Now, if you take a look at this, you'll notice that we're not using the values on the right side at all, right? Like, there's no use for true. It doesn't matter whether it's there or not. So we can actually use a special object in JavaScript called a set. What a set looks like is it's still an object. The only difference is that it will only hold unique values in there. So it can be unique numbers in our case, or like unique reference numbers to other objects. So let's see what that would look like. We'll use example 2 as the input. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. So with our same object, we iterate through the array. At our first iteration, there's no 1 in there, so we'll stick the value 1. At our next iteration, we'll look at the set, and there's no 2 in there, so we'll stick in number 2. At the next iteration, we'll see that there's no 3, we'll put in 3. And at 4, we see that there's no 4 in the set, we'll put in 4. And at the last iteration, it'll end because it's greater than nums.length. And because we reach all the way to the very end of the array and we never meet an instance where we see a value that appears at least twice, we will return false. Now let's take a look and see what that looked like in terms of time and space. Time and space for either using a hash map or a set will be O of n, and for space, because you're building in an object, it'll also be at O of n. O of n. Okay. An example to explain O of n a little bit, it would be like in the worst case scenario, let's say you have an array length of 1000, and the first 999 numbers are unique, and the very last number is a 1. So you have to iterate through the entire array, and then at the very end, you find out that you see a value that appears twice in the array. So that means you have to iterate through every single place in the array, and that would be O of n time. And the same would be true for building an object, which would also be O of n time in the worst case scenario. The same would be true for building an object, which would also be O of n time in the worst case scenario. Or the worst case scenario could also be that you have 1000 unique numbers or objects, in which case you would have to go through the entire array in order to know that. And let's see what that would look like in the code. So let's first start out with setting up our set. Const set equals new set. And we'll have our for loop. And at the end, we will return false if we get all the way to the end of the array and all of the numbers are unique, then we will return false. So in our for loop, we have two options. We can use a for let I equals 0 when I is less than nums.length, I++, but we're not using the index value for anything. So in our case, we can actually use a for of loop. So that would look like for let num of nums. We want to check inside of the set and see if that number exists in there or not. And if we don't have it in there, with every iteration, we want to make sure that we put that number in there. If set.has our num, what do we do here? We simply return true. And with every iteration, we want to make sure we add num into it, because our breaking condition would be this if statement on line 9. If we make it all the way to the end of the array and they're all unique, we will simply return false. And that's how I would go about it. If y'all liked this video, please help out by liking and subscribing, and I'll see y'all soon. Thanks for watching.